All right. We're live. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? All right, just gonna wait for some people to chime in because I know it was a lot of people that really wanted to hear my response to this topic and talk about some things in regards to this topic. Six the Goddess posted something on her page today, and it created a lot of confusion in regards to some people, in the comment section. And I just decided to chime in and just share my perspective on things and give a professional level of opinion on things, some feedback, and kind of break that down a little bit further as to what it was that she was talking about in terms of attachment being masculine energy and a product of leadership, control, etc. And obviously not being and operating in that particular type of energy. On the contrast would be feminine energy, and what that kind of gets in line to speaking towards the feminine versus masculine energy and what it means to be one or the other, and where you should be operating and more closely aligned, given your particular status in that relationship. So yeah, gonna just wait on a few more people to chime in. I see some people chiming in on the YouTube. So yeah, just waiting on a few more people to gather in and kind of get this discussion started. I had a few people, in the comment section that I actually reached out to, and I appreciate everyone that came through to follow the page, to be able to tune in to this discussion, to like a lot of the posts and the information on my page, and tuning into the stories, etc. So if you're not following the YouTube channel, make sure that you actually click the link in the bio and go on over to the YouTube. Make sure that you comment, like, and subscribe, and hit that notifications button so that you'll know when I go live. And if you follow me on the YouTube platform only, make sure that you hop over on that Instagram, mentality_counselor, as I mentioned on some of my previous videos. And we're doing Tough Topic Tuesday today. I also just wanted to actually throw that in there. But as I mentioned on previous videos, there are a lot of things that I post on Instagram that I do not, in fact, post to YouTube. So if you're only on the YouTube platform, make sure that you hop over to the Instagram, because I do have a lot of information on there. And sometimes there's a lot of things that I do not post on YouTube that I will, in fact, post on to the Instagram. All right. So I saw a lot of people actually even too that did in fact appreciate the breakdown that she gave, and I think that unlike many people on these platforms who speak on certain topics and share a lot of perspective, one of the things I do really like about Six the Goddess is, for one, her operation and her feminine energy, divinely so, I must add. She actually operates in her feminine energy very divinely. So she gives a lot of context. That's something that I feel like, again, that started me on this whole journey and getting on these platforms, was because there are a lot of, these quote unquote relationship gurus and coaches and, all of this stuff. And that's not to discount anybody. I do want to add that, but I noticed that a lot of these people weren't given a lot of context, and quite frankly weren't even equipped to be able to do so. And it doesn't speak to their personal lives. I don't know any of these people personally, but the thing is that I noticed that a lot of times when people give advice, it's oftentimes biased, and it doesn't come from an objective standpoint, doesn't come from a logical standpoint, and they themselves aren't operating in whatever energy maybe they should be operating in themselves. So you have to get more closely aligned. You have to do a lot of work on yourself internally to be able to get to these places to share these things. But then there's an added benefit that I have, and that is not only is doing the internal work and being able to speak from and share from certain perspectives, but there's also a professional and educational component that I possess, being a licensed mental health counselor myself. But they don't preach about us being together. Yeah, I really agree with that. I really agree with that. I'm one that comes with solution focused modality. Like, that is how I operate. It's like solution focused, because that doesn't always mean that the two people will stay together. I agree with that also. The promotion of division, like that is so true, and that is what I got tired of myself. And the lack of context too. I want to add to that. Not only is the promotion of division, the lack of promotion of being together, but then there's there's just like a huge lack of context with a lot of this stuff. And like I said, there's biased opinions. Solutions is it, yeah. So somebody here, yeah, solutions is what we need. I would agree with that. And I appreciate the comments. So y'all keep that coming. And as we get deeper into this discussion too, I want to hear perspectives. I want to hear if this situation you dealt with, going back and watch some of the previous videos, because I might bring some of those topics back up as well. But yeah, the solution and the context is what we need. So like, okay, we got the problems. We know what the problems are, right? We know what the problems are in relationships, generally speaking. We know that there's a lack of insight, and that's a big thing. There's a lack of acknowledgement, acceptance, and accountability. But then how do we fix those things, right? How do we get to the point of reconciliation, and where are we making the mistakes, right? So that in order to not make the mistakes, we have to recognize where we're falling short, right, where we're missing the mark. And I think that there's not enough inclusion, and as you know, we were just talking about, there's so much division, right? There's a lot of divisive context. There's a lot of back and forth bickering. There's so much of that, and I'm just so sick of it. So with this particular post, I really like the fact that she broke it down the way that she did. There are some areas in there that I do want to clear up, and I think some of the verbiage may be what's really confusing people. The term, the use of attachment, I think that's one of the biggest things that really mess people's psyche up, is that use of attachment, the word attachment. And then when we talk about masculine versus feminine energy, I think there's a lot of confusion there as well. The lack of togetherness and what division has done to our community, right? Mental health, illness in the community plays a huge part. That's true. And right. And so speaking on that really quickly before I dive too deep into the topic, and so this may be another Tough Topic Tuesday discussion. So I really want to hear what y'all want Tough Topic Tuesday discussions to be about. And that may even carry over a little bit into Work Through It Wednesday, which is when I was designing these. I sort of had this in mind and envisioning that, and then carrying over furthermore into Throwback Thursday. Because remember, my Throwback Thursdays has a little bit of a spin on it. We're going with the cliche hashtag Throwback Thursday, but it's talking about past issues and traumas that are left unresolved. And a lot of what you just talked about here in the comment section is the mental health illness issue, and that is a part of it. And that doesn't mean psychiatric type of treatment. That doesn't mean severe psychosis or anything like that, because I've done that type of work before, and that's not what that means. And I think a lot of times some of the stigma surrounding that, especially in our communities, people of color, is that like we think that when we hear go talk to a therapist, or you need to talk to a therapist, right? There's this attack that's taken from that, right? You need to see someone. There's an attack there. Like, and so then if we perceive that as an attack, because remember, it's all about perception. Remember, the reason the brand is named Mentality Counseling and Consulting is that very reason. I've talked about this over and over and over in my videos. Our mentality and our thinking are two different things. Mentality is not thinking. Mentality dictates how and what you think, how you perceive things. That's a huge part of it. So the foundation from which we operate from, right, that is what shapes our thinking, how we perceive things. So oftentimes when we hear things like this, it's the fact that a lot of people hear that as like defensive, right? That's an attack, so I need to be defensive. And the same with this post, which we'll get into in a sec. It's the same concept, right? It's the same ideology, right? It's the same frame of reference, same mentality, right? Being open to actually listening, right? That has a lot to do with mentality, actually. Has a lot to do with mentality. So again, our frame of reference, right, the foundation from which we operate from, it dictates our thinking. Our thinking then dictates our actions, our behaviors, and the way that we speak, right? So then that's carrying it over to a third level, right? So then we talk about defensiveness and right perception, right? How we perceive something. If it's an attack, then guess what? That then dictates how we respond to it. And that's what I was just talking about. So then we have mentality, shapes our thinking, right? Then that shapes our actions, behaviors, and our verbal, right? Our verbalizations. And then that furthermore, right, expounds to our beliefs, right? What we believe. And this is kind of what you're talking about right now, is the entirety, the perception, right? The general perception of things. And then that is what's passed down, you know, from a cultural perspective, from a relationship interaction component, you know, to how we treat other people, right? How we perceive situations, etc. It shapes literally the foundation and the premise from a traditions standpoint, right? So that's a lot of what you're talking about right now. So we all suffer and need to address, right, and get help, right? So right, that's exactly what I'm speaking to right now. So we got mentality, thinking, actions, behaviors, right? Words, beliefs, and then lastly, all of those things then shape our reality. So then how you perceive something, right? How you respond to something based on your frame of reference, right? The foundation from which you operate on, right? All of that then creates a reality in which you live. Now, the issue with that is that it creates a reality, right, for you, and then from that reality you get what we call affirmation, right? So you get some validation in your thinking. You think, I'm justified in thinking this because look at it, it's happening, it's a reality, right? So then that is when you were saying like being open and like actively listening, right? Not listening to respond, because I talk about that. There's this cliche of, you know, well, you know, communication is key. That's the thing. Communication is key. I've seen this so many times. I got sick of it, because the thing is that comprehension is the key. We can communicate. We can verbally speak things all day. I mean, take this post, for example. She stated what she stated in the post, but then with the verbiage or whatever the issue was, that everybody didn't quite understand that, right? And that's because certain people receive certain information differently, right? That's because some people's comprehension, and not to say it's like a level, but it's just their way of comprehending things is very different. So right, so how we perceive things come from growth, our mental and emotional history as well. So not just even mental, yeah, emotional. So that's right. Yeah, no, don't shut up. Don't shut up at all, because I truthfully, I like engagement. I like just to hear things. It gives me, like, I got 13 years of experience in this. So, you know, just trying to come on these videos and pull certain things to get people talking about, or to engage in, or create certain topics from, you know, it does good for me to hear certain people give different perspectives, or situations maybe that they've encountered or gone through, or maybe going through, right? Work Through It Wednesday. That's something that we can talk about on Work Through It Wednesday. It's like something you may be going through currently. I'm here to give help for that. It's not official counseling or anything like that, so there's no legality involved in it, but just to give different perspective from somebody who's actually licensed. So if you haven't quite taken that step to seek out your own therapist, you know, you've got me, and that's what I'm here for, is for the community, for, you know, just to give that different perspective, to give a professional outlook, to give some objective advice, right? Not to get, you know, likes or follows or whatever the case is, right? It's just as many people as I can reach with that objectivity, with that professional opinion, and with the real advice that they need to be hearing. That's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna keep doing it. So, you know, tell a friend to tell a friend. And bring them over to the page, because I want to get these things even more interactive and more engaged, right? It's all about the mental, and that's why I created this brand. When I rebranded my practice, that's exactly what I had in mind, is to be able to help shape things the way that they should be. um okay, okay, that's real cool. That's dope. That's dope. You don't have to have a degree in it, right? I think it's just, even from, you know, Six the Goddess, and like I was mentioning earlier, that's one of the reasons that I really, really appreciate her, because she wasn't always that way. And, you know, she will gladly share that insight and that perspective as to, you know, growing through those changes, and what it takes to make those changes for her, you know, what it took for her. And I really, really appreciate people like yourself and like her, that, you know, especially women, especially our women. I'll be honest, because that is, you know, contrary to popular opinion, that's one of the ways that it starts, and that's kind of what I'm going to get into a little bit too. Because when we think about nurturing, when we think about you know, cultural upbringing or passing things along, right? If we go to a traditional way, like let's just do this, and I'm not saying one way or the other is right or wrong or whatever, but I'm just saying we go to a traditional foundational belief and operative, right? A way of operating, right? If a man is to provide, then who is teaching? Got to ask yourself that. If a man is to provide, then who is teaching? Who is nurturing? Whose job is it to nurture? Right? If we're talking about a familial aspect, right? A man's job is to nurture. A woman's job is to nurture, and a man's job is to provide, right? So to give those provisions, and then who is passing along the culture? The woman, right? So when we're talking about ideology, when we're talking about mentality, the thing that you're saying, a perspective of growing and learning, is how you got into this level, right? And trying to seek and building, shaping your mind, always being open. Openness is so big. Openness is so big. Because if you're not open to receive information, right, and your perception is always that someone is attacking you or someone is against you, or that they can't teach you something, a man can't tell me anything, right? I don't need a man. I hear that so much. Working with a lot of ladies in therapy right now too, as well, who've gotten to this point where they're open and they're looking at themselves. So what she's saying here, to jump into it a little bit, see, we got attachment, right? And what I did was I broke it down to attachment versus possession, because that's essentially kind of what she's talking about here. Attachment is a masculine energy, and I read through the entirety of her post and the caption underneath that. And what she was saying essentially in terms of attachment is masculine energy, she was saying that she's taking that as like a possessive, right? So meaning as a possessive. So if we talk about the definition, right, of attachment, and it's an extra part or extension that is or can be attached to something to perform a particular function, right? Or an affection, fondness, or sympathy for someone or something, right? So a bond or closeness, some of those things are some of the synonyms that you could use for that word. Now, if we kind of take the possession component that I mentioned, and we talk about responsibility, right? Because that's essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about possession, right? We're talking about a responsibility for it, because we're not necessarily saying ownership, right? Not like a property, but if one had property and one valued property, it would be a responsible action, right? So that's why I use that. So if we dial that down a little bit, we take attachment versus possession, right? And we broke that down into responsibility, right? Possession being responsibility for something, right? A duty or a commitment, right, to something, right? So the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone, right? Some of those synonyms would include things like authority, control, power, leadership, management, influence, duty. The state or fact of being accountable, right? Or to blame for something. Oftentimes, when we're talking about masculine energy, right, a man would see, right, his wife as a representation of him, right? So feeling responsible for, right? We're talking about influence, management, leadership, right? So if I'm leading this person, right, and I'm going to get into how this is applicable in a second. So we're talking about leadership, influence, accountability for, right? Having responsibility for, right? And a lot of people will hear that control word, right? Control over someone, and they'll run off with that. And that's a lot of what I heard the confusion in terms of the attachment versus possession and et cetera, influence, control over. The opportunity, another definition for responsibility is responsibility I'm talking about right now, right? The opportunity or ability to act independently and make decisions without authorization, right? So not needing a woman's approval, right, to do whatever they feel that is best in terms of growth, structure, and overall prosperity of the family, right? Because now he's attached himself to this family, right? So that's a duty, right? So we're talking about duty to the woman, to the family, right? To the circumstances and situations to which he's subscribed to, right? So that's where this is really, really going to be key, right? So guidance, leadership, things like that, that's what it breaks down into. So then we talk about attachment, right? So a lot of times you see those things with no, I agree with her wholeheartedly. Yeah, I mean, most people don't understand because they aren't on that level mentally. Yeah, that's correct. And you know, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I saw a lot of the comments in that particular post from her. And I wanted to kind of speak to that because I was seeing a lot of confusion. And again, I'm big on context. I'm super, super big on context because I believe that with explanation, there's a lot of understanding that can be gained from that. I even saw some guys in there too. You know, there's I have certain feelings about that. You know, I don't know that it's necessarily from a point of understanding or lack thereof, should I say, or appeasement, and that's a whole other topic as far as relationships goes. But like appeasement, and I may actually even write that down too, because appeasing in relationships is like something that is a huge problem, and what happened is that'll eventually start some other issues down the road. But see, if we talk about again, see having like a responsibility for it, and like a vision, right, and stepping into masculine energy, that is not necessarily where you're operating from. If you're operating in masculine energy, you don't necessarily need that type of approval or to appease, right? You're doing what you know is right, and you're operating on that standard because at the end of the day, it's beneficial to the family. You know that within your heart, and nothing can deter you from operating in that way. And if a woman is trying to stop that, and this is where we're getting into it, this is what she was saying. If a woman is trying to stop that, then that's where she's operating into the masculine energy because she's trying to take control over that situation, right? And that is where then it becomes to the whole piece of attachment, right? So she's attaching herself, right, to the guidance, right, and the outcome of that instead of trusting, right, and leading in the way that she can in her feminine energy. Feminine energy is very strong, so it doesn't operate in what you would see as a typical masculine energy. Yeah, this topic does run very, very deep, and there's a lot of subtopics that we can talk about. So yeah, I like taking responsibility, right, and even agreeing that there are issues that we need to find solutions to, right? So, and that's why I'm doing this is right, is to give that solution focused component to it. So let's do this. Let's jump over to the definition of masculine, right? Having qualities or appearance traditionally associated with men. To me, that's quite rudimentary and simple. Like that's very, very that's very simple. Um, I'm so glad you said this. I've actually got that as a point. I've got that as a point on here. So we've grown so prone to being masculine because of circumstances. How do we get back to being feminine? Powerful, 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 powerful statement right there. That's I mean that statement in question is exponentially, like I don't even know how to say how important and significant that question is. And we're diving into it a little bit. So stay tuned with what I'm saying. And so I'm at gaining back my femininity and growing. And really what you talked about earlier, the comment earlier mentioned as far as like openness, that's one of the things. Peace King, appreciate that. That's one of the things. God of Power LLC in here. I really appreciate that. Y'all go like and follow God of Power LLC. That they got some great clothes on there. Black owned business. I definitely am about inclusion, but I do think that it's important to go and support our Black owned businesses, myself being one of them, because it's just so far few in between, and we lack that support. So yeah, but had to throw that in there though because that it show a lot of love. That company right there is dope. So yeah, the way that we get back to that, sister, is really we have to learn to be open, right, to hearing the tough topics, right, to going through these things, to sharing the perspectives, and then coming to it with the solution focused energy, right? Not bashing, not coming from a place of anger, right, of discontentment, but of a place of peace, love, understanding, right, to be able to reconcile, right, any disagreement. And this is in relationships. I teach this a lot of times in relationships. Don't focus on the fact that there is a problem, but focus on never getting back to that, right? So if we put our energy in never getting back there, right, if we put our energy there, then our energy then is solution focused. So same thing with femininity, right? So for women who talk to me about operating in their feminine energy again, and having to step into a masculine role, or energy, then I say to you is, look at who you're surrounding yourself with. That's where you start at first. That's where you start yourself at first, right? If anyone is supporting you operating outside of what is naturally, divinely where you should be, then you already know right then and there they're not influencing you. So the flower that they're watering, right, is one that isn't natural for you, right? It's a space that isn't natural for you. So that's one of the first things. That's one of the first things. I've actually got a post somewhere on my Instagram page that talks about like other people's opinions or perspectives in your relationship, and like how do you approach that. And so again, like a topic that we can just really really dive into. But we talk about masculine energy, right? And so that is one that is having qualities or appearance traditionally associated with men. So if it's typically associated with men, then that must mean what? It comes natural, right? It's something that feels natural to you as a man. That's what that says. That's what that says to me. So that's why I say that's, to me, that's rudimentary, and that's quite natural. That's just a natural characteristic or trait that you would have or possess, be operating in that particular space and energy, right? And flow. Masculinity, qualities or attributes, right? Regarded as characteristic of men, right? I mean, so essentially saying the exact same thing, right? A natural form. So then jump over to feminine, right? This is feminine, not femininity, and I'll explain why I'm separating the two in a second, right? So feminine and femininity, right? The act of being feminine, right? And masculinity, the act of being masculine. So right, operating in those natural spaces, right? Having qualities or appearance, right? Or an appearance. See, that those are two key things in both of these, traditionally associated with women. Ladylike, girlish, female, soft, delicate, right? Soft, delicate. When you notice yourself operating outside of your femininity and trying to get back there, so sis, to answer your question, it would be when I notice myself being too hard or too masculine, right? Another thing is that we need to start having the talk and the discussions with one another if we decide to move away from a relationship, right? If we're dating someone and there's something not meshing, we need to start having talks with each other. That's one of the biggest things that I've noticed with a lot of people that I counsel and I work with, is that I notice that they just leave, right? They just ghost people, right? Immaturely so. That's immature. That's immature, and it's not productive. It's not productive. You cannot say that you love the community. You cannot say that you're one of peace, love, understanding, acceptance, etc. All these things, right, that I hear people say, and then you're just ghosting people, cutting people off, and not giving them any explanation, any room for growth, right? You're not even giving them the opportunity, right? So someone like yourself, right, no closure. I'm dealing with somebody right now that's dealing with a situation like that, and that's not right. That's not right. We're not doing anything productive, and you're certainly not doing anything productive for yourself, because there's a lot of shame and guilt associated with that. And if you're not feeling shame or guilty about that, then you got a bigger issue on your hands right there. And that's when we get into this thing that I've also been seeing floating around there about narcissism, right? Self-centeredness, and that type of behavior. So that's when we really get into that kind of talk, because I see that word thrown around very loosely, and I will touch on that some as well. I'm alone now. I cut all that off. That's good. Stripping everything and seeking peace. Do the work on yourself. So yeah, to get to more of an answer to your question as well, with what I just mentioned about separating yourself, decreasing your circle, getting people around you that are really promoting your femininity and supporting your femininity and holding you accountable. That's another key thing. Accountability. If people aren't holding you accountable, you got a lot of yes men around you. You really need to question that. You probably need to get a new circle. So that's one way, and that goes for masculine and feminine energy too, because there are, again, a lot of males that are operating in outside of that masculine energy, through like appeasing, right? Like saying things that is popular, or that will get them that popularity, right? Gain popularity, or maybe avoiding, right, what is avoiding what is unpopular, right? So avoiding some of that backlash. I knew it was time because of a broken engagement, and we realized that my femininity is truly depleted. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I see it as fortunate as well. Again, looking at things on the positive, looking at things from a different perspective, a different lens. That's a moment for you to grow. At least you had that opportunity and that insight to be able to look at yourself and introspectively and grow from that. So when we're talking about attachment, right? Attachment, see, what I could break that down into is a connection, right? Having a connection with someone, right? And what that looks like, right? So having a concern for them, some positive regard. I talked a little bit about in my post to that post was the unconditional positive regard, right? You got unconditional positive regard, like I care about your well-being, right? And admiration, right? And counsel to that person. Another strong component to femininity is counsel. A man values you, he will value your opinion, right? Doesn't mean he will go with that opinion. Doesn't mean that he will take that as the end all be all. He will see himself as the end all be all in the decision making process. But rest assuring, right, that lying in your femininity, right, you have the power of counsel. So not fighting with him on choosing your option, right, your decision, but allowing yourself, right, to operate in your divine femininity to get the outcome that you propose, right? So there's power in that. Some might call it manipulation, but I mean, it is what it is, right? There's power in doing that, right? And it's coming from a good place. So I truly think of manipulation as having a negative component or stigma to it. And I think that if we're operating in a place of love and right positive regard, right? Unconditional positive regard for that person, not unconditional love or sacrifice, right? Because you're not getting anything back in those types of situations all the time. A lot of times, another thing is just pouring into the wrong people. So when we're talking about femininity, right, that emotional aspect of that, which is natural, it gets damaged, right? It's delicate. We just got done talking about it's soft, delicate, female, right? Ladylike, womanly, all those things and adjectives that you can talk about and descriptors to attached to that word, right? So attachment, right, versus possession. A man will see himself as attached to his woman and his family. Therefore, with vision and focus, he will do anything, right? Anything to make sure that their well-being is taken care of, that they have the best outcome proposed in life based on his vision and what her desires are. So, right, femininity, right, desires, expressing those desires, right, the counsel, the concern, the care for him will allow him to be assured in his masculinity that he can, will, and should provide all of those things for that said person, right? Yeah, damage from pouring into the wrong people. Real time. I've been doing this for a long time. I do a lot of work with couples. I do a lot of work with people that have been hurt in situations. But the power in that, like I mentioned, even in your situation, the power in that is the realization, the insight, the accountability that you've had for yourself for the mistakes that you've made. There's growth in that. There's growth in that. Accountability is a very, very powerful thing, damn powerful thing. And you can have some growth from that, a lot of growth from that. So when I hear people bashing or down talking, then I know they're still broken, right? As long as that situation, and that's the attachment piece that she was talking about, right? A woman doesn't need to operate in that energy. And in fact, she'll choose what desires her, right? So if a man isn't doing those things, right, that is necessary, right, and operating within his divine masculinity, you shouldn't be there. I'm a guy. I'm telling you, shouldn't be there. If he isn't doing the things that are set forth, right, in his divine masculinity to provide or to care for you, to attend to your needs and your wants, and you're attending to those needs and wants for him. Now again, I give context with everything. Perception is everything. Just because you feel like you have something to offer, just because you feel like you're doing those things, that might not always be true. That might not necessarily be true. See, when you ask what those things are, right, he conveys and he gets attitude back. Well, that isn't operating in divine femininity. In fact, you're operating at a low vibration of femininity, right? You're operating at a low frequency of that, just as well as a man who wouldn't appreciate those things, right? A woman who's cooking, cleaning for him, or whatever the case may be, or maybe she's showing love, support, and care and concern for his business, and then, you know, he's just out in the streets and doing whatever he wants to, right? He's cheating on her left and right, right? But you staying in that situation, see, again, there's accountability, right? There's accountability. See, you stand in that situation, that's not him. That's you. That's you. Get out of that situation, strengthen yourself, grow from that, learn from that, heal yourself from those hurts and those past traumas so that you then don't inflict that on someone else. All men are dogs, right? That's what thinking ideologies like that come from, right? Oh man, all she gonna do is cheat on you. She nothing but a hoe, right? All those things come from that, right? Because he was cheated on, right? But he didn't look at why. He didn't look at why. I'm not saying that I agree with these things. All I'm saying is that you got to look in the mirror first. Where was I lacking, right? If you don't ask yourself that fundamental question with any relationship that you've been in, you will not grow. You will not heal. So, right, it's healthy for a woman to love and appreciate, right? But to not be attached with the decisions that he's making for his life. That's what she was saying. See, that's the breakdown there. That's the difference. He'll make those decisions. If he loves, honors, cherishes you and the family, he'll make the necessary decisions, right? To grow, to support, to change your situation, right? Right? But then there's a component of concern, love, admiration, counsel, right? Support that in operating in divine femininity that you have to be giving as well. So if a man isn't fulfilling his role and his needs on your behalf, then and you're remaining in that situation, then see again, you've got to ask yourself why. Why? I'm not operating in my divine femininity. Why will he respect you? Why would he? Right? And the same goes vice versa. For a guy who's doing all those things for a woman and she's not respecting you, why? Why would she respect you? You're not operating in your masculine energy from that perspective because you wouldn't put up with those things, right? You would depart and detach from those things and fulfill your purpose. You would stay focused and aligned. Masculine energy does that. It doesn't operate primarily out of emotion, as does feminine energy. So when we're talking about responsibility, right? If a man sees something in terms of something that he's responsible for, right? Possession, right? Ownership, control, he's going to do what it takes. He's going to do what it takes. See, this time I was with a king who was holding me accountable and I was lacking. Yeah. And you know, honestly, that's great insight though. I still say that you're growing and that's great insight. So to see that you weren't ready and where he was and where he was operating and honestly, so how did that relationship end, if you don't mind my asking? Did he end that relationship or did you? Well, I'm waiting on her to respond to that. I want to hear the answer to that though. Did he end that relationship or did you? Because you said you recognize, right, that he was holding you accountable and you were lacking in certain things and realizing that you're not ready for a marriage. Hi, Queen. I really appreciate you joining in. Yeah, he ended. So see, to my point, right? So he ended that because he was operating his divine masculinity. You see what I'm saying? So he's on purpose. He's walking with purpose, right? Broke off the engagement and told you to heal. That's a king. And that's what I was talking about earlier about giving you that closure, giving you that insight and that perspective. Like a lot of times when we end these relationships, we don't do what it takes to allow that other person to heal. I'm not saying in every case they do that. We do have, in fact, toxic people out there, which is another word that I'm really hesitant on using because that is another word like narcissism that I was mentioning that's thrown out there a lot. But unless you have a person who is like that, they won't receive that. And that's not your duty. That's not your responsibility anymore. And as a woman operating in divine femininity, you wouldn't even be worried about that anyway. Because remember, again, you would be choosing what's choosing you. You see what I'm saying? You would be choosing what's choosing you. In this case, he chose you. You weren't ready, and you recognize that you need to heal. You did, but hey, I'm gonna post it. Click the link in the bio. You're able to go and follow the YouTube channel. Make sure that you comment, like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. That way you know when I'm going live. But this Tough Topic Tuesday, I'm gonna also post it to the Instagram page, so you can go back and watch it as well. Give some comments too, because I will be talking about this. So if it's something you feel like maybe you didn't answer or you still need some clarity on from that post from Six the Goddess, definitely I will go in. Again, I'm trying to give any and all feedback that I can in between sessions that I do with some of my people that I see that are on here and follow my pages because I do have some clients that are on here as well. But honestly, like it's just for any and everybody. So yeah, we just talked a little bit about attachment and from that post, kind of the differentiation between possession and how a man will see that, right? And it's not, oftentimes really, really, I appreciate you. And that's what I do it for. It's truly like this situation of a guy seeing the qualities in you. So what it is that he saw your capability. He saw your potential. You couldn't see that because you're operating in your masculinity. And right, and I don't think you are. I think that you and truly, in fact, are healing in that regard as well. Because right, he's moving in purpose and figuring out what yours is. And truthfully, you might not figure that out just yet. You might attach, right, to a person, and then you lose that, right? Or you may get aligned with a king who then brings you to yours. So I don't know that necessarily would be the goal. I know that really it's again that I was talking about, like working on yourself internally, right? If we figure out where we are internally, then what we can do is that we can then bring ourselves whole and complete to a relationship. I talked about this in a previous post and discussion. You want to be as close to 100% complete with yourself before entering into a relationship. You want to be closely aligned with who you are, right? And this is autonomy, right? This is that whole confusion with the independence thing, and I hate that, and I don't even preach that in what I do in relationships, because eventually what you want in a relationship, you want the goal to be interdependence. That's different from codependence, right? Not needing the other person to fulfill your purpose or to align with your goals, your perspectives, your ideology, right? You have those things that are separate from your individual, right? Your partner, but you bring those things, right, together as one, right? So you want to be whole and complete within yourself, so that then when you move, right, into a situation that involves a relationship, right, with someone who then sees responsibility for you, over you, your circumstance, then that guidance and that growth will continue. We're ever evolving, right? Yeah, working on you is the ultimate right now. I agree with that. That's great. That's great, because we don't want to continue to inflict trauma and things on. Like, luckily, this person was obviously, aligned with his purpose, and I get why you said that he was operating in his kingdom, and that's what I call it. Stepping into your kingdom. So I like that. Want to be whole and then entering into another relationship, however long that takes. I'm ready for this journey. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That right there is beautiful, sister. I tell you right now, that is beautiful that you are operating there. That, in fact, right now shows your growth. I would say definitely, keep doing that. And when I talked about stepping back into your femininity, you're doing it right now just by saying a lot of the things that I've heard you say on this particular, live discussion, and that just being openness is like the starter. right? So when we talk about like getting back to something, and this again, it's on both sides even, but we're talking about femininity in this particular case, getting back to that, that just really involves you just being open, right? To being able to hear that accountability and the areas where you're lacking. Because see, a lot of times, see, again, we're talking about possession. See, as a masculine energy, right? A guy sees that as possession, responsibility, right? Guidance, leadership. So then it's only natural that he would say, hey, you know, things of accountability, right? He would tell you ways to fix yourself. But again, that perspective, see, a lot of times what I've seen is that that is seen as an attack, right, on the person. But see, it's because you haven't grown internally. So you're going to see that as an attack. So that's where the attachment piece comes into versus, you know, possession and masculinity, etc. Because a man will attach himself to that. He's going to take pride in what he's doing to get you to where you need to be to operate divinely feminine. So that then, guess what? As a representation of him and the relationship and the family, one who will have a mindset, a mentality to nurture, right, the traditions that we were speaking of and getting back to that as a culture, as a society, then guess what? That's who he's going to trust. That's who he's going to want to raise his children. That's who he's going to want to feed and to counsel him. See, because again, it's reciprocal. See, love is a reciprocal thing. A relationship is a reciprocal thing. So there has to be a giving and a taking in that. It has to be that way in order for it to not only survive, but to thrive. That's the goal, to thrive. Interdependence, autonomy is important also in interdependence because, again, you're bringing two individuals whole or as close to it into a relationship, right? Into a partnership, right? So interdependence would be the goal. Autonomy, having your own hobbies, interests, etc. Not attaching yourself to that guy. I wouldn't, it can damage only if you're mature enough to. Okay, can you stay together and work it out with a person that's not ready but open to doing the work? So you can do that if they're open to doing the work. However, now the thing is with that is that if you decide to stay in that and they're willing, right, open to doing the work, right, that's where I differentiate open, willing, right? Because a person can be open, right? They can be open to hearing what you got to say and saying they're open to doing the work. Then the willingness component comes in because see, there's an action, right? That has to happen. So a person has to actually be doing that work. There has to be, you know, different standards and mile markers set in place to be able to gauge the work that is being done, right? Because openness is one thing, willingness and action is another thing. So that person isn't actively doing the work to change and showing that consistently, then it leaves the other person still depleted all the same, right? Because you're then feeling like you're pouring so much into that person. Now you can remain autonomous in that, right? So then detaching yourself while in a relationship, which is difficult to do. You know, that's the difficult part to that, is that you have to somewhat detach yourself. And as a masculine energy, that's going to be difficult. That's where it gets really sticky from a masculine standpoint, right? Because you are in fact attaching yourself to those things, because in a woman, as I just described, you're looking for all of those things. You're looking for a nurturer, right? You're looking for someone to pass those ideologies, beliefs, and etc. down to your lineage, essentially, your legacy. Right. Think about it like this. And this is a tough one. I do these sometimes in my counseling sessions. If you were to die, right, as a man, think about this. If you were to die tomorrow, would you trust the person raising your children to instill in them the values that you live by? Think about that. That's how deep it runs. That's how you have to think about it. That's the perspective from which you have to go. And that's where the masculine and feminine component come into play versus attachment, possession, etc. You know, as opposed to connection, right? A woman should have that connection with a person, and they should be choosing her, right? Aligning themselves with her in order to fulfill their purpose, right? And her to the benefit of that, right? And I talked about the reciprocal energy, etc. Because a man is going to be determined, right? He's going to have a focus, right? An alignment. So again, if you can detach yourself from that situation while they're actively doing the work, right? So yeah, it's a very risky situation. And you have to be very, very diligent. You have to be really, really, truly in your kingdom, like truthfully. You have to be very, very diligent in the work that you're doing for yourself and maintaining the focus that you have and alignment with your purpose in order to stay in that type of situation. As for a woman, that's actually quite natural. That's actually, again, it's feminine. It's feminine energy. But nonetheless, with the two situations. So what I mean by that, before I move on, with a woman, the feminine energy, it's natural to be able to pour into, right? Because essentially, what you're looking for is someone to, in fact, step into that kingdom, right? To align with the purpose, so that then they can lead you in the way that you need to be led, right? Um, with the two, right? The thing is that you have to have a cutoff point. Cannot stress this enough. You have to have a cutoff point. So with that type of situation, God Apparel, you have to have a cutoff point. You have to say at which point is enough. At what point is this depleting me enough and I care about myself enough, right? Aligned with my purpose, aligned with my energy, aligned with what I want for my life, right? And this masculine or feminine, then at what point am I going to say enough is enough? At what point am I going to say I can't do this because it's depleting me, or this isn't for me? Again, still important to be able to have those conversations, right? Still important to be able to have those conversations with people to allow them to grow, right? But if you feel as though that situation is depleting, right, of you, it is no longer fulfilling of you, then at some point you got to say enough is enough. At some point you got to decide, hey, I gotta get out of this. While maintaining a relationship. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I truthfully feel that it is possible. Again, I'm not one to speak in absolute, so I think anything is possible, but I think that it would be a lot more work to do in a situation like that, God Apparel, if you were to stay with someone who is open to doing the work. But again, there has to be action. There has to be active, steps, and there has to be boundary standards, some type of milestones to be met consistently. I really, really want to stress that too, consistently, so that you can know that that person is doing the work and that they're here to stay, to continue to do that work and align with your purpose. In this case, it will be your purpose because it's a masculine energy that you're bringing to the table. So it will be aligning with what you're doing. And that's the key thing. That's where it gets really tricky as a masculine energy trying to convince a feminine energy of that, because in doing that, to a degree, you're stepping outside of masculine energy, and that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of appeasing. So she was mentioning earlier in terms of like her king stepping away, right, and saying, hey, you need to heal, I'm moving on. It sounds to some maybe that was selfish, but that's good. That's actually good. It's good to be selfish. It's good to be selfish. Some may say that's heartless. It wasn't. It was, in fact, actually very heartfelt, because obviously there was a lot of care, concern there to be able to give that type of feedback. The growth is that she was open to hearing it. That's the growth. She was willing to do that work. And now what I hear her saying is that she's unwilling to move into anything else without having done that work herself. And that is the beautiful part about that. That is divinely feminine. That is growing, right? Wherever you focus, right? Wherever you water the seed, right? Wherever you put that attention, right? That's what will grow. So that's why if you're trying to step back into a feminine energy, you need to surround yourself with people that are facilitating that type of growth. You need to surround yourself with positive, and that goes to social media as well. I don't follow things that don't contribute to my overall well-being and growth, right? I don't follow things that don't contribute to my growth. Fundamentally so, in fact. So that is also important. What we follow, what we look at, all that stuff. If it's not contributing to an overall growth, right, within myself, development, insight, accountability, something that might be tough for me to hear, then that's where you have to align yourself with the openness, right? The insight, the introspection to where you need to change. That is where it's most important. Where do I need to change? Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's real good. And with that being said, I really, really appreciate it. And I want to say this again too, because I've gotten, I haven't really had this page active for a long time, and I've gotten some people that have tuned in and been engaged and following. So I really, really appreciate everybody that does, because what that says to me is that you really, really appreciate what I contribute and bring to your life. So that's an honor for me. And I'll, as long as there's breath in my body, I'll continue to be genuine and do just that. So I really appreciate the fact that that's where you're coming from and that you are following me. So like I said, tell a friend to tell a friend, bring them over to me, tell them to follow, tell them to watch, look out. I got a lot more stuff that's coming, and I really, really want to help. So I appreciate all the love. I appreciate all the love. What are my thoughts on taking a person back after they have grown? Right now, our community, especially from a male perspective, when they're told to never take them back. Yeah, again, so yeah, the toxicity in that is detrimental. Detrimental. Um, there's so much growth we need as a community, as society, quite frankly speaking, as a whole. Um, Never taking them back. Again, I don't speak in absolutes. I really think no one should, if I'm being honest. I think it's super important to be able to see things objectively, and that's why I've said that word so many times in this particular live alone. And you'll hear me say that through and through. Objectivity is super important, because what that does is it allows you to see things from a different perspective, one that takes the emotional component out of it so that you make a logical, effective decision, right? So you don't want to make a decision based on subjectivity, right? Thinking on one perspective, right? You want to see all things, you want to see a broader perspective, right? Yeah. And right, it depends on the person and the growth. I think, and that's exactly what I'm getting. I think that really that's a situational thing. I think that's a situational circumstance. I think you have to evaluate for yourself. I think that furthermore, you have to again make sure that introspectively, right, the insight for yourself is one that is still aligned with purpose. If this does not align with where you are currently, so let's just say if you break up with someone and then 5 years later they're like, hey, I did the work, I'm back, and you're like, well, I'm on a different path in life right now. I'm doing something different with my life right now. Or maybe I'm with someone new, right? Maybe I've grown to the point where I've completely detached emotionally, right? Connected to you, and from a masculine perspective, from what you're asking, right? If you've moved on, you aren't even attached from a possessive standpoint of that person anymore. At least you shouldn't be, because if you're operating right divinely, so your attachment is no longer aligned with that person. It's no longer aligned with that person anymore. They aren't fundamentally your responsibility anymore. So that is what would have to grow. So what I would say first and foremost is that you would need to date that person over again if you were willing to put that time and energy. If you're willing to put that time and energy back into that person, because again, you have to look at where you may be in your life. If your life isn't permitting you to do that, or maybe you have some other attachments that are going on right now, I don't know that that's necessarily the best case scenario. Probably that person has lost out. That would be truthful. That would be the truthful and honest response. And that's how I do. I'm a straight shooter. Even in therapy, I'm a straight shooter. I always do that. I'm even unorthodox in some ways because of that, but I'm a straight shooter. I'm going to give it to you real. And I think that in some cases that's one that, you know, if you know, if it's aligned, like I said, you know, start over dating that person again and see and allow that to manifest itself naturally. If it does not mesh, if there's even the slightest thing that you aren't really feeling, you need to state that and make it known in that moment, or decide whether or not that's even something you're willing to even dive back into. Because clearly, if you're having to revisit something, then clearly they haven't done the work that they needed to do to be with you. Because again, they're operating in masculine energy. They're trying to, you should say, like, you're taking responsibility for their leadership, guidance, etc. And if they aren't aligned with your purpose, right, for life, because remember I talked about, if you die today, would you trust that person to leave your legacy, right, to teach the things that you value in life from a masculine perspective to your children, to your offspring, to your legacy? In fact, you know, the answer is no. You got to move on. So yeah. So I really think, again, you know, I don't speak in absolutes, but I just think that's a very, very tricky situation. It depends on the person, it depends on the circumstances, and it mostly and importantly depends on where you are in your particular moment in time in life, and your personal growth, alignment, and purpose. I hope that answers the question, you know, as much as I can, generally speaking. Any other questions? It's coming up on well, actually we over an hour, but I love doing this. I love doing this. So if y'all want to talk about something else, actually I appreciate that. I'm glad that it did then. Yeah, but if y'all want to talk about something, you know, tomorrow, moving forward, etc., give me a topic. Tomorrow is Work Through It Wednesday, so that could be, you know, a current situation, right? Current situation that you're going through, deciding whether or not to work through it or to remove yourself. And that's kind of what we just touched on a little bit. So if y'all got a specific topic that y'all want to talk about tomorrow for Work Through It Wednesday, let me know. I will decide to go live. Other than that, I may not actually be going live. I got a few sessions tomorrow, so I would definitely be busy, especially throughout the daytime. But if there's something that, you know, anybody wants to hear specifically, let me know and we'll talk about it. We'll chop it up. I love getting on here and talking about this. This is my passion. This is what I do. Again, this is aligned with my purpose. This is my business. This is my passion. This is my life. This is my legacy. So if somebody's not aligned with that, then guess what? They got to go. They got to go. And I think that truthfully, that's how everybody should be. And again, if we're talking from a feminine standpoint, if you're not willing to align with that particular person's point of view and attaching yourself to that, right? That ain't the person for you. Remove yourself. So yeah, I'm not biased. I don't cut it one way or the other. You know, I'm gonna give it to you straight. I'm gonna give it to everybody straight, no matter who it is, you know, and where they're operating from. Because again, I love what I do. I have a passion for what I do, and I believe that giving objective, unbiased feedback and information and perspective is the most important thing, and that's what I do. Now, I appreciate you. I appreciate you all for, you know, chiming in and looking at the live. Those of you who didn't comment, I see you watching. So I still appreciate y'all coming in and just, you know, just tuning in. Really, truthfully, I hope that everybody got something from it. I really, really appreciate it. I try to, you know, back and forth in between the YouTube. Oh yeah. I appreciate it. Yeah. I appreciate that as well for myself, you know, with people with me. And I believe in being genuine and honest with people. You know, so I really, really think that that's just the way to be. That's how I'm gonna operate. That's how I always have been. That's how I always will be. I'll die a straight shooter. So, yeah, I think this will be very beneficial to our people to remove stigma around using therapy as a resource. Keep doing this work, King Stanley. Purpose. Oh, no doubt, no doubt. Nothing can take me away from that purpose. Nothing can take me away from that purpose. Like I said, King, if it does, if it attempts to, it's not good for you. And that's masculine or feminine energy, truth be told. So yeah, if somebody's trying to take you off your purpose, then clearly that isn't the person for you. Don't even waste your time anymore. Time is the one true currency. The one thing, once you spend it, you can never get it back. You can never get it back. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. So yeah, I appreciate all of y'all. I love y'all. Again, thanks for chiming in. Tell a friend and tell a friend. For those of you who chimed in late, I will be posting it on the page. So again, click the link in the bio, go follow the YouTube, like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you hit those notifications so that you know when I'm going live. Man, for those of you on YouTube, I really, really appreciate everyone watching. I appreciate the thumbs up. Go and follow the Instagram page, mentality_counseling. And like I said, I really, really, really appreciate everybody. Really appreciate everybody. I love the comments, and make sure that y'all go and give me something to talk about. Whatever y'all want to talk about, I'm down to talk about it. I love discussions like this, and I'll keep doing more of them. So I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good night. Love y'all.